Well, good evening and welcome to the Brothas-in-law. Those of you new to the channel, I'm Corey Taylor, and tonight my co-host is Mr. Michael Bradley. He and I are both prior law enforcement police officers. I was a 7-year state trooper here for the state of Virginia, and Mike is a 26-year veteran, retired veteran, I should say, of the Pleasanton Police Department in Pleasanton, California. So we'd like to welcome you all to the show tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about the young black 8-year-old kid that was snatched off his bike for stealing a bag of chips. Now we got two different videos to show you, basically showing you how the media plays on our emotions to get us all riled up and stirred up, and not really stepping back. Like Mike and I always talk about in our videos, how we need to just take a step back and wait for more evidence to come out, more video footage to come out, and then let's start formulating our opinions of what happened, what should have happened. So we're going to look at both videos and talk about the actions of the police officers to make sure, hey, were they acting as reasonable officers? So welcome to the show. If you're new, again, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Share this out to everybody. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Good to be back. Good to do another one again this week. Like you said, Corey, this is one of those videos where when you first see it on the media, they show it without a lot of context, and they put these taglines in there to say he was quote unquote snatched off the bike, and they just roughed him all up for just a bag of chips. And then you got the bystanders getting involved and yelling at people, officers not really knowing the full context of what was going on either. It's one of those things. It's a good video to talk about. Let's get into it. Hey, Stacey, thanks for the birthday wish.
Oh, yeah. Let's not forget today is Mike's birthday, so throw him a happy birthday in the comments down below.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, man. Looking good for an old man.
Hey, I'm proud to be 52 years old, man.
Yes, sir.
You're all good.
Yeah, I'm right behind you, dog. Hey, enjoy. So, which one we want to start out with first? We'll start out with the hey, Katrina. Hey, Matt. They all say happy birthday, Mike.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I think we'll start off with the first one that everybody saw on social media that kind of got everybody riled up. And we'll look at that. We'll let it play through that. I think that was a very short one. It's like a minute long.
Yeah.
But then
hey, Tone, thanks.
At the end, Mike, I was gonna say we might mention about and I haven't, maybe not, we probably won't, because I haven't really read that article about the New Year's Eve shooting in Canton, Ohio.
Oh.
I think there was an update to it. I wanted to mention it towards the end of the show, but I had to read the article again because I wasn't too clear on it. I really just gazed over it. I didn't get really into it. So, but we might say that for next week. But just to put that out there, that there is an update to that shooting. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
All right.
Which one is that? And again, this is about 9 minutes or minute and 9 seconds. Be advised, there is some profanity in this, so just be cautious.
What is y'all doing? What is y'all doing?
Guess what I'm doing.
Hey, you're like a baby to me. Why you?
Guess what I'm doing.
I don't know what you doing. I just see you snatching him off the. So what? So what's going on then?
You're stealing stuff. If you went to your house to steal something.
Nah, man. What is that, a bag of chips? So y'all treat me like a whole cold-blooded killer?
Keep walking. You don't even know what
Keep walking. I know what I just came up and seen. I know that I just came up and seen.
Okay, what did you see?
I see y'all snatching him off the bike like you're a fucking grown-ass man. And he said it wasn't here. What is y'all doing? What is y'all talking about, man?
That's against the law.
What is y'all doing? What is y'all doing? Take your f***ing chips. If you steal some chips, I'll pay for them. I'll pay for them. You don't even know where he lives. Y'all just throwing him in the f***ing car.
That's what they do. They come here.
Because y'all do it. Leave him alone.
On camera, that's all we can do.
He a kid.
And that's it.
So the bystander sounds like he was making more of an issue than the kid, but at any rate, you know, that's what they show initially on the media, and yeah, that sparks most people. They look at that and say, "Wow, what are these cops doing?" You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Without knowing the full story, that might make it a little, you know, the initial visual of it might shock some consciences from people who maybe aren't used to having to deal with some kids that are stealing from the store. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But you know, we can get into the body camera and show a little bit more and put in the context of what was going on here. You know?
Right. So, right. But and keep in mind where this citizen picked up recording. So, you know, he just saw at the tail end the officer, you know, maybe where the kid was standing over the bike had him. It's wording. He used the word snatched. As we're going to see here in a second, you'll be the judge of that yourself, whether or not this kid was snatched off the bike. Mm-hmm. And, you know, playing on words is how we get everybody's emotions all riled up and everything blown out of proportion here when we just, like we always say, step back, wait, let's look and see what's going on here. You know, clearly this guy didn't know this kid, and the story has in news articles is saying that this same officer had an encounter with the little boy 2 weeks prior for stealing a bicycle. So they know this little boy. He's been introduced to the wrong side of the law already at such a young age. What you think about that, Mike?
No, you're right. I mean, at 8 years old, yes, there are some things that as an officer I'm going to take into consideration. You know what I'm saying? Sure. At 8 years old, there's a lot of things I'm not going to do to an 8-year-old that I would do to someone that's older. You see what I'm saying? The only thing I'll say about the age, though, is don't let the age alone doesn't automatically change some things. Some things it does, some things it doesn't. That's all. But yeah, I am going to treat an 8-year-old a little differently than I would a 16-year-old or a 26-year-old, obviously, right? In a situation like this. And when we see the other video here, we can have a better conversation of what these officers may have been thinking and why they responded the way they did.
Yeah, and Katrina says, "Oh, that gave her a headache," and asks and says, "How do we put up with that?" You know, Katrina, that's just one of the many hats as officers you have to wear. You know, and it's also like you saying, Mike, you have to be able to separate. Right? Obviously, you're not going to handle an 8-year-old like I would handle, you know, a 26-year-old or older or younger, or I should say, maybe 14, 15, 16-year-old. You may have to put a little hands on. The situation is going to dictate how you handle it. Now, in this video, however, we did not see them handcuff the kid. Where I heard in one other story that they did handcuff the kid. You know, but you know, we can't, you know, when we see the other video, Mike and I get into, I think, of what he and I would have done. I think we probably would have done some similar steps in this matter. Would I have taken the kid off to jail? Probably not. But
no, I wouldn't. Well, we can't take somebody that young to jail anyway. Or juvenile.
Well, you're going to juvie. You're going to juvie.
The point is, ultimately, they'll be released. They get released
back to their parents,
obviously.
Right.
But you know,
well, hold on. Let me hold my comment on that, and then let me just go ahead and set this other video. Go ahead and chime in, Mike, while I set this.
No, yeah, I mean, the officers still have a job to do. They say, yeah, it's just a bag of chips. Well, yeah, it's just a bag of chips, but the officer still got a responsibility to handle that bag of chips that was stolen from the store. The store is the victim. Obviously, they called the police because this kid was stealing, right? So that's how the cops even got involved. The police aren't the victim. The store is the victim. So we can't just ignore it. You see what I'm saying? You got to contact the kid. You got to detain that kid. And then you got to continue with the regular steps of what you would do as an officer with that kid. Now, when you got this side guy coming in yelling and screaming at you, saying, what the F you doing? You treating him like a criminal and yelling and screaming at you without really, there's some people that will do that automatically, whether you're doing something unreasonable or not. And now you got to pay attention to this guy, because what if he was the type of bystander who decided to physically get involved? Now you got a much bigger issue. Now you got to worry about this bystander who's over here yelling and chirping off at you. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, what else do I have to deal with now? Right now, it's just an 8-year-old with a bag of chips. Easy thing. I can easily take care of that and be done with it. You know what I'm saying? But the bystander could add an additional something to the situation and might change it. That's all.
Yeah. Stacey says real quick, do you think they did this maybe to scare him from stealing? Maybe. I mean,
let's talk about. Well, after we see the second video, let's talk about what they did. I mean, did what exactly? You see what I'm saying? I think that's what's open for discussion. Did these officers do something that was unreasonable?
Right, and that's the key word. That's the key word, reasonable.
Right.
So keep that in perspective. Hey, what's up, Blackjack? As we watch the second video. All right, here we go, Mike. Do I got to share? Yeah. The body cam. All right. And this one is about 9 minutes, but we're not watching the whole because this is from the local news channel.
What are you doing?
See the kid on the bike.
On the bike.
Oh, yeah, because I'm not going to find him there. Where are you going? Didn't we just go through this? Didn't we just go through this? You were crying in the backseat of my car? Remember that? Get off your bike. Get off your bike. Hey.
It wasn't you.
Get off your bike. Get off. Come on. Come on. Hey.
He wasn't snatched off his bike.
Get over here.
You got the other kid actually tried to snatch the other kid away from the
Right.
That wasn't
You see the guy videotaping the citizen.
I don't know what you doing. I just see you snatching my
You don't know.
So what's going on then?
Stealing stuff. If you break into your house, you steal something.
Nah, man, we stole a bag of chips, so y'all treat me like a whole full-blooded.
See, and this bystander don't even really care what's going on. He just don't like these police cameras.
Pat and Megan, store owner.
Now you hear the last part. You see y'all snatched him off his bike like he was a grown ass man.
And that's not what happened.
That's not what happened.
That's
and
not
see
what
that
happened. He didn't snatch
that's
him
where,
off the bike like that.
Right. And now you see how the media plays the public by putting something out there. But see, now you got everybody spun up. You got all these activists out here, ranting and raving on the police and how they treating, 8-year-old black boys. And clearly it wasn't like that. Now, I will say, the one thing I did have a problem with, Mike.
I know what you're going to say, too. I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, him dumping that bag of Doritos.
I knew you was going to say that. If there was anything that was inappropriate, would be considered questionable. Now you could say once the bag is open, it's going to be disposed of anyway. It's trash.
You can't. Right.
You can't. You're not going to return that to the store.
Correct.
I knew you was going to say that, Corey. Yeah. If there was anything that I say would have been questionable, it would have been the whole dumping the bag of chips out. That might have been more of an emotional response by that officer than anything.
So. Because he said, we just talked about this before.
Right.
See, they've had a dealing with this young boy versus where that other citizen videotaping, he doesn't know what the law enforcement guys know about, interacting with different people. He just sees this kid being detained by the police. I mean, in his actions there, is that what a reasonable officer would have done? Dump out the bag of chips on a young man like that? No. Would I have done that?
I would
No.
have done that.
I know you wouldn't have done that.
I wouldn't have dumped the chips.
Is that grounds? Is that grounds for him to get fired? No.
No.
Is it grounds for him
nothing
to
like
get,
that? Is it abusive
grounds for him
or anything? No.
He probably get talked to by a supervisor. Hey, you shouldn't have done that. That wasn't, professional. All right.
Okay. I can accept that, definitely.
Done deal. Right. I mean, but to go overboard with that now, that doesn't diminish the whole call for service. That little part right there. We gotta look at the whole context of everything, what took place. Was he snatched up off the bike? No,
he wasn't snatched up off the bike. Was
he manhandled?
Yeah, he was manhandled because the boy was screaming. Obviously, this officer had dealt with him before on stealing. Okay, just a couple of weeks prior. So he knew that this kid must have didn't learn his lesson. This isn't an 8. Clearly, this doesn't seem like an 8-year-old who's saying yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, I'm sorry, I learned my lesson, things like that. This isn't that kind of 8-year-old. This is an 8-year-old who has stolen before from the store, probably stolen a lot more from the store as far as we know, and the owner of the store probably got tired of it and decided to call the police. A lot of times a store ain't gonna call the police over an 8-year-old, one incident of an 8-year-old stealing a bag of chips. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna deal with it some other way, probably. But in this case, they called the police. That tells me that this ain't the first time this kid done stole from this store. Right. And the store owner is probably tired of it.
Because that's costing him money.
Yeah.
Right. That's costing money.
I'm sorry, Corey, but it's just a couple of things. One of the things that grabbed me was the kid's friend who actually tried to grab the kid away from the officer. Did you notice that? He actually tried to pull the child away from the officer. That's very disturbing to me, because that is something that child learned to do. From seeing older folks fighting with the police, older folks fighting and trying to get away from the police. That's a learned behavior that kid tried to pull that his friend away from the officer. That's more disturbing to me than anything. That's more disturbing to me than the officer grabbing the kids by the shoulders and putting them in the patrol car. If that were my kid and he stole a bag of chips, okay, I would have no problem with what that officer did just now, especially if he's dealt with my kid before stealing. On that, what you say to that, Corey?
No, absolutely. In fact, well, let me answer Matthew's question. His question was, did you guys ever dump beer or small? I think it was, let me see, small amount of weed.
Yeah.
I if it's personal use, I mean, a small little dime bag, and every situation is going to be different. And Matt, you and I have talked, several years ago about things like this. It's situation dictates, what you're going to do. And that's probably one of the good things about being in law enforcement and law enforcement officer. There are things we can do, but except for, when the law states you shall, then that kind of ties our hands.
Our hands are tied at that point.
Right. Hands are tied at that point. And we have to arrest you. Now, like what I had done in this many times dealing with juveniles, I don't care what time it is. I'm calling your mom and daddy out. I would have called his parents out there. Now, in this story, however, just to let our viewers know, they did end up taking the boy home to his dad. They did not take him to juvie, and that's another whole probably show to do on juvenile detention. A lot of officers don't like dealing with that, but I would have done the same thing these officers did. I would have took them straight home. And
I would be willing to bet most officers, like that's another show, but most officers would rather just release that child to the parent or responsible adult.
You're gonna release it to some type
really
of guardian.
Trying to travel to juvenile hall and do all of that stuff. There's a whole lot to that that takes up a lot of time versus just releasing them to a parent.
Yeah, and that's what I would have done, and I've done in the past dealing with young teenagers out on the interstate, reckless driving, whatever. Here's what we're gonna do: either you're gonna call your parents and get somebody out here, or you going to juvie. Choice is yours. What you want to do? And mom and dad come out there expeditiously. I get on the phone, let them know everything's cool. I got your son or daughter detained right now for whatever violation. And you need to come get them, or I'm taking them to juvie. And believe it or not, they're out there. They come, or I'll be right there. And sometimes, Mike, that's a lot worse than taking them to juvie.
Yeah, you'd be worried about what your parents going to do to you more than anybody else, right?
Yeah. Because I don't know if I ever told this story, but I had to stop my mom. She wanted to whip that child out there. No, you can't do it. Wait till I leave. You do it. Let me go.
You take him home, okay?
Do that at home. She's, I'm gonna beat the blue. I mean, she went off, and I think that hurt that young man more than going to do it. The look on his face, Mike, was like, "Oh man, why'd you have to do that? It was take me on to jail now." But sometimes that method works. Just calling the parents out there, and 9 times out of 10, depending on what the crime that has been committed is what we're gonna do. And like Mike said, majority of time is calling the parents out there, taking that individual home, and that's what happened here. But overall, I think I'm not understanding why everyone's in the uproar over this. What you say, Mike?
I agree. I would have handled it the same way. Normally a call like this, Corey, you and I know, but we both handled calls like this before, and a normal response would be just what these officers did. I wouldn't have arrested the kid at 8 years old. I probably wouldn't even given him a ticket or anything like that. It would have been more of a counsel and release. I would have called the parents right there while I was at the scene and try to get the parents to come to the scene where I was detaining this kid. Would I put the kid in the back of my patrol car? Sure. There's nothing unreasonable about that. Clearly, this kid was yelling and screaming too. We wouldn't know if you just stood there with him and let him go, would he have taken off? He probably would have tried to run based on what his friend did, trying to pull him away. The kid probably would have taken off and run from the officer. You know what I'm saying? So would I have grabbed this kid and put him in the back of my patrol car? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. If anything, you safer in the back of my patrol car because number one, I know you ain't going to run away. Number two, I know you ain't going to get hurt by trying to fight or anything like that. You're only 8 years old, okay? And number three, I got you secured so that when I do call your parents, I can say I got him right here. He's in the back of my patrol car. I'm going to need you to come down and pick him up because this is what he was accused of doing, and this is why I'm stopping him. I would have said all that on the phone. Now, Corey, you and I both know parents don't always come out. There's some times when a parent may not be able to come out for whatever reason. Maybe it's a single parent who has an infant at home and can't get the infant out like that, or something else going on, which is fine. It's very common, especially if I'm within the same city, that I'll transport this 8-year-old home and release him at the house to the parent at their house. I'll let the parent know, hey, I'm bringing him back and we'll talk about what's going on. You see what I'm saying? Very common way to handle that call. you're not just going to let the kid go because he's 8 years old. And here's the mentality I hate. It's just a bag of chips. Okay, it's just a bag of chips today. What about next week when it's more than a bag of chips? Okay, let's hope that this incident was quote unquote traumatizing enough to deter this kid from continuing his behavior. Now, if I heard some of the news stuff correctly, they were saying how, the father works and is not home a lot to supervise these kids. The mother apparently is in jail for something. I'm pretty sure I heard that as being reported in the news.
Yep.
And if I'm incorrect on that, forgive me, but I'm pretty sure I heard that. So this kid already, you can tell, doesn't have a lot of supervision throughout the day, probably. Okay.
Well, and that's where they're going with this story, how to solve these type of problems and have more government involvement in this and taking care of these kids like this. Well, my wife and I were talking about this a few days ago. I was like, why do you need more government involvement? Listen, back in the day, if my parents were going to work longer or whatever, were going to be away, they always made the arrangements for us to be somewhere or for somebody to come over to watch us. They just didn't let us run rampant because they were working long hours and things like that.
Not at 8 years old, especially. I would not run the streets at 8 years old.
Now, when you were running the streets at 8. Now, I mean, again, we don't know their economics background here. I know the dad was working long hours, but what other help did he have? The mom being incarcerated. Did he have any other family members around that could have, volunteered or stepped up and say, hey, this is where, when you get home from school, this is where you need to go. You need to go Aunt Tammy's or somebody or Grandma Louise down the street. You need to be going to somebody's house. You're not coming home and then just ripping and running the streets.
Going to the store, grabbing a bag of chips at 8 years old by yourself on your bike.
Right.
Now, Matt wanted me to expand a little bit on the cultural implications of the friend trying to pull him away. The reason why that bothered me is because you have a child who is learning this behavior of fighting with the police. It's clear that this kid learned the behavior that, number one, I'm either supposed to fight with the police or I'm supposed to run from the police. It is clear that message is getting to this kid some kind of way.
Some kind of way.
Now, whether that's what he sees on the media, whether that's what he sees maybe in his own family, or maybe in the circles that, unfortunately, the influence that he has around him, maybe that's had something to do with that. But clearly, little kids don't try to pull away from an officer, their friend away from the officer to try to get away. That's something you see on TV or something you see in a negative environment around you. Okay. So that's why that really bothers me, because as this kid grows up, there's no one there. Well, I hope there will be someone there, but right now it seems like there's no one there who is going to correct that thought process in this young child. Okay. No, you don't fight with the police. No, you don't pull your friend away from the police when the police are trying to put him in a patrol car. You see what I'm saying? This is how you behave around police, and this is how you don't behave around police. And I think that it's important that parents and adults around these kids are teaching these kids that, because that is the start of a problem of someone who wants to try to fight with police. You know what I'm saying?
And we all know how that ends.
What you think about that, Corey?
And we know how that ends when you start with that type of behavior.
Right.
I'm totally agreeing with you, because I think it's a learned thing. It's because the media has put so much fear out there, and a lot of the language that certain people are using out there is saying, hey, You get stopped by the police, like a gentleman I was telling you about, a young kid that doesn't want to get his driver's license because he's afraid of being stopped by the police. So these are all learned things that these young folks are learning from home. You get stopped by the police, you might just get killed. No, that's not necessarily always the case. It always ends up because somebody's running, somebody goes for a gun when it shouldn't have. We're not saying everyone is justifiable. That's not what we're saying. But it is a learned thing. So that's where Mike and I come in. That's why we're doing this channel, and to say there is a way that you are to conduct yourself when interacting with law enforcement. And that's staying calm, comply, answer questions, listen, and move on. Right? You have to start at this age at 8 years old. We have to, like Stacey said, whatever happened to it takes a village to raise the kids. Where is the village? Right? Where is the village? Mike, you and I grew up in the same, not on the same side of town, but the same.
We had the same circles. We had the same positive people in our lives that teach us, no, you don't do this. This is what you do. But the people that we had around us had some sense too. You see what I'm saying? Every kid don't have that benefit though.
Every kid does, but that doesn't mean they can't learn.
True.
How to interact with law enforcement, and that's where we need to start. We have to break this myth and this stereotype that you're going to get hurt or killed while interacting with law enforcement. No, that's the wrong attitude to have. And you see clearly this, like you pointed out in the video, the other little kid trying to pull his friend away. That's definitely, I think, a learned behavior as well. Because what's the number one problem we have? It's blacks in interacting with law enforcement and the violence that often takes place in these situations. Well, we have to look at why the violence is taking place. And something like the video we talked about last week, something as simple as an expired registration ends up with someone getting killed. Well, it should never get to that point. Never get to that point.
And I hear you, Tone. Tone says devil's advocate. I love to play devil's advocate too, Tone. Maybe the kid who got in the way saw former law enforcement abuse in his neighborhood. That's very possible. I'm not arguing that at all. Maybe he did see that and he's afraid of the abuse. Maybe he thinks that that's going to happen to him. But that being said, that doesn't change the fact that he should be taught that you don't fight with law enforcement. Everybody, we should all know when you choose to fight with law enforcement, you actually make that situation way more worse than it ever could have been. You're taking something very minor in comparison and turning into something very major. You know what I'm saying? And that still needs to be taught to kids, even if they've seen incidents of police brutality. You see what I'm saying? One of the ways to do that with the little kids is to take your kid down to the police station. Let him or her see the officers that work his neighborhood. Okay. Participate in community events that the law enforcement agencies have in your neighborhoods. And I hope that they are having some events in your neighborhoods for the community to get to know these officers. Okay. That little kid, unfortunately, knew this officer because he had dealt with him on a negative basis a couple of weeks before. You know what I'm saying? But unfortunately, you can also make the argument that this kid who stole a bag of chips, his only experience with law enforcement was negative because of something that he was doing bad. Well, someone needs to make sure we get that message to the kid too, that look, it wasn't but for your actions that these officers did this. You see what I'm saying? So we got to look at that too. Now, I ain't saying don't address police brutality. We never say that on the show. You know what I'm saying? Police brutality should be dealt with. It should be dealt with swiftly and effectively. Okay. We just have an issue with some things that are perceived as police brutality that we don't perceive it as police brutality. That's all. We're definitely not saying that stuff doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying? But and we're definitely not saying that we support anything close to that. Okay, not at all. All right, but in this situation, these two kids, I don't think that these officers did anything that was unreasonable or anything that was overboard at all in this situation. I would be perfectly fine if that was my kid, and that's exactly how that officer handled my kid by putting him in the back of the patrol car. I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. I mean, that's just me.
No, like I said, I think we come to that conclusion earlier. I mean, it's fine. They didn't handcuff him. They didn't snatch him off the bicycle like the other citizen was trying to portray. And that's, I think that's what irks me more is how the media tries to portray these incidents, and then everything gets blown out of proportion. But then when you see the other video come out, you're so far gone with what you already your opinion you already came up with, that you know, when the other video comes out, you don't really care. You think that now that the police are lying, oh, they doctored that video and all this other kind of stuff. But you know, we have to sit back, we have to look at it and be patient. Like I always used to tell Goat, you know, when something happened and he would call me, he's like, well, you know, that's kind of effed up why it happened. I would just always say, man, just wait. And he would tell you, man, I'm so glad, Corey, you always say that, because I learned to wait now. And every time we wait, we find out, oh, well, yep, that was a good you know. Now, like you said, Mike, if the cop is wrong, then absolutely, without a doubt, they need to be held accountable. You would never hear Mike and I, you know, glorify a wrongful incident, particularly a shooting. And because we're going to look at everything, right? We're going to look at all sides and talk to you about, is this what we would do if we were in that situation as prior law enforcement,
Right?
And as reasonable people. And Mike and I have grown up in the same environment back in Canton, Ohio. And like he said, had the same inner circle. I'm pretty confident in saying that Mike would do or has done his job in a very professional manner, and I'm sure will vouch for me. We're not going to do anything that's going to bring discredit to ourselves. Or I mean, and most officers are as well, because we know the repercussions of it. That's not something they want to do, is get involved in a shooting. I thank God in my time there, I didn't have to pull my gun, but I'm thankful I never had to pull the trigger.
Yeah. And you know, another thing, these bystanders, you know, sometimes the bystander can come in and just make the whole situation so much worse, because this bystander really, you could tell that he really didn't care what was going on. He just didn't like the fact that these officers were handling this 8-year-old who stole a bag of chips. That's all he cared about. He didn't think that he thought that these officers should have just let him go. You know what I'm saying? Let him go. I'll pay. What did he say? I'll pay for the chips. It's not about paying for the chips. You're not the victim. The store is the victim. The store called us, and we're handling this appropriately. This child's parents need to get involved. And if we need to sit this child in the back of the patrol car, then that's what we need to do as police officers, until we get these parents involved and turn this child over to the parents, and then they can handle it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Maybe the parents need some assistance, you know what I'm saying, in handling some things, and maybe the police officers have some resources to refer them to. But the bystander came into this, and I think his reaction is part of what sparked outrage, if you will, with the media and in the community. You know what I'm saying? Because they only wanted to look at the bystander's view. It didn't care nothing about that this kid stole a bag of chips. In their minds, it's just a bag of chips. It's just a bag of chips. Well, it's not about just the bag of chips. It's
Well,
about
like
the
you
act
said,
of theft. That's what it's
right.
about.
And
Right?
like you said earlier, Mike, it's a bag of chips today. Tomorrow, it could be somebody's car or
Right.
breaking it in somebody's house. It's like the one officer said, you know, what do you gonna do when he breaks into somebody's house?
Mhm. That's right.
Right.
You know, so
So
yeah.
you have to handle it. And I agree. It's not about, you know, okay, yeah, pay for the bag of chips. Now, could that have been another option for the police to do too? Say, hey, okay, hey kid, are you home? What if he knows the kid don't have, you know, food to eat at home? What the officer, hey, all right, hey, go to the store. Hey, I'll pay for the bag of chips. Boom, boom, boom. All right, kid, listen, I don't want to ever see you come around this store again. You come around this store again, you go into juvie, or I'm gonna tell your mom then whatever, and let him go. Could the officer have done something like that?
Maybe the officer did that 2 weeks ago, and now the kid's back
Maybe.
stealing
Ah,
again. You see what I'm saying? We don't know, but
we
yeah,
don't
I
know.
see what you're saying. That's
Mhm.
something maybe you could look at this 8-year-old and try to find out more about where this 8-year-old come from. Would I still call the parents? Yeah,
Yep.
I would still call the parents though, with an 8-year-old, and try to figure out, you know, what the situation is. Do they need some kind of assistance? But look at the bystander in this and how he was reacting to the police.
Yeah.
Probably, if I were to judge the neighborhood by this bystander, I would think that this kid is exposed to those kinds of people all the time. F
All
the
the time.
police, uh,
Yeah.
you treating them like an effing criminal. You know what I'm saying? This dude didn't
Hint
care
is
about using foul language and cussing in front of this
yep.
little innocent 8-year-old. He
Yep.
didn't care about him then. You see what I'm saying? He didn't have
Yelling.
enough
Hey.
respect to not talk that way in front of the 8-year-old only until the police got involved.
Yeah,
You know
and
what
now
I'm
you
saying?
know why the little 8-year-old said he ain't do nothing. He ain't steal it. Of course, you never do it. That's the number one answer we get from every criminal. I ain't do it, man. I got you right here on camera, stealing the bag of chips. You want to still stick with that story? Go right ahead. But this is you right here on camera, right? And he trying to see. Little Timmy said he ain't steal it, man. That's
Mhm.
so you gonna believe this little kid? I mean, that's his buddy. Of course he gonna say he ain't do it.
And like we said, it's more than just a bag of chips. It's
It's more than
more.
that.
It's about way more than just a bag of chips. It's about this kid who this is the second time he's been in contact with officers for stealing. Okay, and his friend trying to pull him away from officers who are trying to do their job. You know, it's much bigger. The community is right. It's much bigger than just this kid stealing a bag of chips. These officers,
Yeah.
you know, are doing something based off of the act of stealing, not just the bag of chips. And it could be something deeper than that. Obviously, he's been in contact before. But I think
Yep.
we beat this. I think we beat this into the beat this horse, you know, a lot.
Oh
But
yeah.
you know,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So hey, thank y'all. Go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Thank y'all for watching us tonight. You know, now, hey, when you share this out, when you're having conversations with your friends about this, when they start off thinking that the cops snatched them off, now you know, share it, tell the truth, share the video with them. I also we'll put the link to both videos in the description below once we finish the show tonight. And you know, this is what it's all about. When you're interacting with law enforcement, there's a way that you need to conduct yourself, and that's through our acronym of CALM: comply, answer questions, listen, and move on. And that's it. Whatever happens, happens. You live to deal with it. And that's just bottom line. Let's just be good citizens. I mean, cops got a job to do. They need to be able to do it. They want to go home, as well as the citizen needs to be able to either one, go to jail, or be released and go on their merry way. But again, thank all y'all for joining us tonight. Again, let's wish Mike a happy birthday and leave us a comment of what you would have done if you were the responding officers. We'd like to hear your comments as well. And did they act reasonably? Let us
yeah,
know in the comments below. Go
yeah.
ahead, Mike.
No, that's it. I was just the last thing, real quick. I just wanted to bring up. I forgot one thing I wanted to bring up. I was hearing people earlier on other shows on the television talking about if this kid were white, the officers would have bought him 2 bags of chips and treated him much better. That's what was said.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I heard that. And my response to that is, you could have that perception every time a white officer contacts a black person under negative circumstances. You can always have that perception. But the point is, were these officers' actions unreasonable? That's really what it's about. It's not about whether this kid was white or black. It's about, were these officers' actions unreasonable? And I say no. I say a reasonable officer would have done this no matter what color the kid was. If this kid was a white kid, I believe this officer would have handled that the same way. If the white kid was acting the same way that this black kid was acting, and if the white kid had been contacted by this same officer 2 weeks ago for stealing, I believe that he would have treated him the same way. You're going to take him to his parents, release him, tell him what's going on, which is what these officers did. So that conversation about, did they do this because he was black? That's getting played out sometimes. In this situation, I can say I don't believe so. I don't believe that race had anything to do with this, because you got to look at the officers' actions first. Were they reasonable or unreasonable? I think they were reasonable. Therefore, race definitely doesn't play into it at all. And Corey, we like to leave race out of it anyway.
Yeah. That definitely in this one you have to leave race out of it, because you also have to keep in perspective too the amount of contact these officers have with blacks in these communities, and you never hear of the good. What if, like we said earlier, what if they did buy him something to eat before, or another officer has done something for him? We don't know. You see something bad happen, we always want to try to make it more than what it is. And so, again, like we say, step back, take a deep breath, let's wait, let's get everything out there, and then formulate your opinion one way or the other.
Thanks for the birthday wishes, folks.
Oh yeah. Hold on, they got one last comment from Tone.
Oh yeah, I'd say let me see.
Yeah, I think the issue is the officer's response to the bystander and his demeanor. Would you say that to that, Mike?
The way this bystander was confronting the officers, the bystander was far more hostile towards the officers than the officers were towards the bystander.
Yeah.
Now the question is, a lot of people will say, does an officer have an obligation to explain to the bystander what's going on? No. That officer doesn't have any obligation to explain to that bystander who is not involved what's going on. But it sounds like these officers at least attempted to explain to this bystander what was going on, but the bystander wasn't really trying to hear it. He wasn't trying. He was too amped up to really try to hear anything that was going on.
I don't think that was his intent to hear what they was having to say. He had his camera going, and he was doing his own narrating.
Yeah, he was
explaining on what he saw at the very, I guess you would say, tail end of it. Just seeing the officer with his hands on him, assuming that the officer snatched him off the bike, and clearly he missed that whole part.
and put it this way, Tone: as an officer, when I'm involved in something, I want as little people to deal with as I can in front of me. Now, if a bystander comes up to me and asks me what's going on, depending on whether I've made my scene safe and done what I've done, I might turn around and talk to that bystander and explain to him what's going on, at least as much as I can. But that also depends on how that bystander is responding to me. If that bystander is saying F you and throwing all kind of F bombs at me, then I'm going to ignore that bystander and make sure that bystander stays over there, and I'm going to continue to finish what I need to do, what I'm dealing with. I just need to make sure the bystanders can stand there and watch all day. Please stand there and watch all day. You want to whip out your cell phone and videotape? Videotape all day. I don't care. Just don't get involved. Don't come over here and physically obstruct me from doing anything.
Doing my job.
That's all.
Yeah, you do it, and then you're gonna then get my attention then fully, and then you're gonna be in handcuffs for obstruction.
Yeah.
So-
Just
so-
because a bystander comes over and says, I think you're doing it wrong or doing something wrong, and you shouldn't, that's not going to make an officer decide, oh, okay, I see. Let me stop this then. Let me go
Right.
do something different.
Yeah,
That's not going to happen.
that way. It
That's not gonna
doesn't happen that way.
No.
Yeah, I mean, you clearly you can't get up there and try to Monday morning quarterback, these incidents like that. Like I said, we've always said in other videos, the best thing you can do is be a great witness. So stand back and just videotape. Keep your mouth closed. Don't draw attention to yourself. You just videotape.
Yep.
And
Stand there with your cell phone all day.
Yeah, you stand with your cell phone all day, take all the pictures you want. The best thing you need to do in any situation like this, when you come upon it, is just to be a great witness. Just videotape you shouting and being more of a distraction, being more of a hazard than you are a benefit. Just stand there.
You're just making those officers feel more unsafe than they may already feel. That's all you're doing when you do that. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, and because then you doing all the shouting, and officers are human too. They're going to get into their emotions, right? We try to bottle that and keep our emotions in check, but we're human too. They may respond back, like this officer did. You don't know what the F you're talking about. You didn't have that to deal with this kid, or what if he come? Me, I probably wouldn't have said anything. I would just say, hey man, you just need to stay back and really ignore him and not give him the time of day, because we as officers, we have to watch what we say, because he is videotaping. And so we don't want to make sure we don't say anything out of, professionalism that gets caught on camera. And now, we got to answer to what we said. So,
George Floyd, there was somebody who stood back with a cell phone and videotape. You're right. In that aspect, absolutely right. They didn't go in and try to push anybody off or nothing. They stood back with the cell phone and videotaped the whole thing. Wasn't nobody trying to obstruct anything or nothing,
Right.
And that's the way you handle it. That's the way you do that as a citizen.
Yep. So good show tonight. Thank you all for your comments. We greatly appreciate it. We're gonna let Mike get off here and enjoy his birthday evening. I'm sure his wife's got a great big dinner planned for him, and a nice big cake with 52 candles on it. So we thank you all for watching. We love you, and we'll be back.
A lot of candles, man.
That's a lot of candles. And when you're done, you can send them my way, so I ain't got to go get none.
All right.
All right, y'all be blessed, and we'll see y'all next week.
Peace out.
Peace.